Hi, everybody.
Hi.
We made it to the end of the year. We're alive. And if you're listening, you're alive too. We decided, to finish the year at least squeezing in a little podcast with our 5 cents that we want to add to everything, considering that the world is on a brink of either total destruction or some form of transformation. We're hoping for the second one, of course. But 2024 is around the corner. Foster, what would you say we can expect?
Well, we're about to go into Aquarius now, Pluto in Aquarius, and that starts in January. And that will go on for 20 years. So that's the big life-changing astrology of the next year. Plus, when we go into the Chinese New Year, there's a tremendous amount of power coming into this year. It's not a gentle year, it's a year of change. We know that for 20 years, nothing will be the same at the end. We know that it will reach its peak in 2027.
But we can also see what happened in 2008 when Pluto the last time changed houses and signs, right? And it went from into Capricorn, and right on time, we had an economic disaster, basically. I really consider that year, 2008, my annus horribile, because it pushed us into a period of great difficulty and great challenge, not us only, but, a lot of people. And I think that we are at the exit point for a lot of signs. I know the cardinal signs are going to be in a great relief and great release point. I always say we're coming out of jail after the system found out that we're not guilty. It took 20 years to get out of jail, and here we are out of jail now, hopefully. So the cardinal signs definitely will feel a lot, the relief and the liberation.
Which is Cancer.
Yeah, Cancer and Scorpio, and I believe it's Gemini and the last one. Go look it up. Go Google it. We had a long day. So, but for some of you, it's going to feel like a big liberation. But also, I really want to take this analogy of coming out of jail. You've done your time. You come out of jail. You're in front of the gates, and then you don't know where to go. I mean, where do you go from here in the real world, so to speak? And I think we're entering the next real world, the next level that I call them densities, not dimensions. But I think we're coming now into the highest density of the third dimension. And we talk a lot to our clients about it and our friends that it's super important to have a goal for this year, something you can focus upon. It doesn't matter what it is. If you want to lose weight, if you want to find love, if you want to manifest more money, a better job, the daily focus on it is going to be really important, because that's what Pluto really does. You see, the atomic bomb, the plutonic element, explodes in one point, and from there it expands. So Pluto can also be seen as a extreme cousin of Jupiter, who just expands everything. Not only, but every idea, every goal, I think, has to be treated like an atomic molecule, that you want at a certain point in your year to explode. I call these moments launching points.
I think that Pluto, when it dredges up everything from the subconscious, when it brings up from the underworld, as it reveals things, it reveals people, of course, who do sexual abuse. It reveals all kinds of corruption. So people lose their positions. Everything gets exposed from their personal life. But as other things come up for us, sometimes it's your ancestry. Sometimes it is what is blocking you. For instance, when you talk about Israel and Hamas in a fight, if you have a personal relationship to that, if you have any resonance for that, from the Second World War or whatever, things will start to rise up inside of your own psyche to be resolved within your own families and your ancestry.
Yeah.
If you have things from Bosnia that are coming up and Bosnia starts to become aggressive, or anything that is Ukrainian and Russian together, any kind of mixing there, that has already started to come up, but it will get even more intense in the next year. So for Americans, of course, it is the division between Republicans and Democrats. things that get revealed. At the same time, we want freedom for people. We have friends who don't want to be vaccinated ever,
Mm.
so they cannot live in California because they're afraid that they will be forced to
Right.
vaccinate. So they move to states like Texas
Mm.
or Florida just because of the anti-vaxxing law.
Right.
And then some people feel that people should have, for whatever convictions, an exemption from that vaccination rule so that people can stay in California,
Mm.
but they're not forced to do their jobs. They can be forced to wear, a thing over their mouth or whatever when there's another COVID scare. So,
Which right now it is.
yes.
Our friends in Europe are literally
tried.
going through it at the moment. Yeah.
Well, we know that many people all over the world are going to go through in 2024 the beginning also of the financial changes.
Mm.
Because
That's for
Pluto
sure.
specifically is looking at what are the roots of the banking system?
Mhm.
What are the roots of money? What are our own issues around money?
Right.
And that's going to come to the surface now.
Right.
Like, one of the great things to do that we talk about is you take like $100 bill and you get rid of all your ideas about money and your attachment to the symbol of that bill.
Mhm.
And you start to cut it up into little pieces.
Mhm.
And then you burn it, the pieces, and you have ashes. And while you're going through that whole process, for a lot of people, $100 is a lot of money.
Mhm.
And they go through all their attachments around money, all their fears, all the fears of the future, of being homeless, whatever. And in that moment, they release it all into the fire.
Mhm.
And then what comes out of that is the feeling inside of them of, I'm liberated, I'm free, and I can allow myself abundance. I can break through every issue that I have around money.
I think abundance and money is going to be the key, because Pluto moves into the house of finances, primary. So we're going to definitely see a lot of people being pummeled. I have to say, look at 2008 and look at the 20 years before that. There were definitely crisis points, and that's what we do a little bit, is to research the periodic parts backwards and see what kind of crisis happened there. Because again, Pluto the last time in Aquarius was the French Revolution, American Revolution, industrialization, and so on. But it was a different time, and also we are speeding up things like immensely at the moment. So I do think that having a financial goal and let me say, I think working on your shadow about finances will be an important subject this year. You call it blockages and so on, but I think people have to really understand what makes them mistrust or distrust systems that can provide you with finances. Because I have to say, America is very different in that sense. A lot of things, a lot of hustles that you can do here that can make you a lot of money are just not possible in Europe, or not allowed even in Europe. We have very different systems, but the world homogenizes more and more. I always say, with Pluto in Aquarius, we will be the most connected ever through our screens, and the most alone of the last decades, because the detachment that also Aquarius has, living in its own bubble. We see this now with opinions and with ideas, but it's really interesting that you bring up the wars, because I think that people feel now the need almost to declare war to something that bothers them, instead of focusing on a solution. I think it's
Or peace.
war is horrendous. It's horrendous. What Hamas did to the Jews is horrible. What the government of Israel has done to Gaza is horrible. It's just horrible. No one in war is right and everybody is wrong. So it's interesting to see people especially in US. I follow the news a little bit when they go on campus, and there are these students who are supposed to be the bright lights of the future, who are tearing down posters of Jewish victims kidnapped. And I'm like, what would make you do that? You see? Mm-hmm. And I feel that people consider an inner war. They bring the wars of the world that doesn't affect them into their own house, into their own lives. And they start wars where they are. They think they have, either they're really bored and have nothing else to do. But it's really amazing how people with no children ate up this whole conspiracy nonsense about child molestation in political parties. It's a affront against people who really went through child abuse. It's what real slavery is. It still exists. And then they sit here in their wonderful little campuses. We pay for a lot with our taxes, of course, and people bring a war into their own lives that has no point. You see, and
well, America gives aid to so many countries. They help Ukraine, they help everything, but that's all taxpayer money. That's all
exactly
our
see,
money.
and I understand completely when I tell you I'm a very liberal person, but I don't see the point of sending so much money over there.
Every
Because
country, all over
money
the world.
is energy. So when we give energy, we receive energy, and you get
What is the
you
end
take.
game of all that? Is that
The
true
end game is that
diplomacy?
the end game could be that we are dragging ourselves energetically into a conflict where we have in this country more than enough problems to solve.
Absolutely, right now.
See, so again, every concern for me that people have is legit. There's a legit reason why people feel the way they feel. I just don't believe that bringing a war into your own doorstep spiritually is the answer. So I hope that next year, it's just a hope, not that it's going to happen, but it's a hope too that people will become a little bit more, what's a good word? Considerate, kinder. I always thought America was so kind when I came. I mean, it's amazing that it's changed so much, absolutely, but it's a loss of spirituality. It's a loss of dedication to truth, and I think I also say that we had now the years of authenticity. That was a big subject and a big word. Authenticity doesn't mean you're honest. You can talk yourself into some authentic state. It doesn't mean that it's true. And now Pluto, in connection with Pluto, in connection with Saturn. Saturn always brings the truth, reveals the truth to the point. And I think we're going to see a lot an exchange of the need to be authentic, no matter the price, and it will be exchanged for truth. Is the authenticity really true? Is it based on truth? Is your knowledge based on truth? And from a social point, from a metaphysical point, spiritual point, I think truth is going to become a big subject.
Well, truth can be very blurred now with AI. Can be very blurred in terms of a photographic image,
Right.
in terms of anything that we're watching now, especially in science fiction, because we're now seeing so many things where people are blurred in their understandings when you're doing kind of propaganda, right? When you have a Republican station, you have then a Democratic station, and then you have everybody not trusting each other and not listening to each other's media outlets.
Right.
So no one knows what the truth really is anymore. It becomes more, not just fantasy, but more conspiracy.
Well, in our last workshops, people ask, of course, what is truth? And I think for me, at least, the core of truth is intention. There has to be some, and I tell you, to everybody who listens and says, we have wonderful people say, I do the work, I can't meditate, I can't see anything, I can't visualize anything, I can't. You don't have to. You really don't have to. If you don't have a crystal clear intention of what you want, all your visualizations, throw them in the garbage. Your truth on top of it, doesn't matter. You need a clear intention, and the intention has two parts. One, it has to be real, it has to be doable, and second, it has to benefit somebody. It has to benefit somebody. Success in any shape or form, not only monetary success, comes when what you do has some benefit in the world, or has some produces some form of elevation to a better state, to a higher state, you see. So and why do I, and I'm sure people will say, but it's important to be authentic. Of course it's important, but more important is also to do a little bit of shadow work in your authenticity, because we have now, and we talked about this, a lot of people in really prominent positions that we look up to, gurus, teachers, masters, and so on. And all that crap comes out about them, all that fantasy that they produce, from the P. Diddy's to that pastor who is,
In Texas and Dallas.
allegedly, in Texas, runs this big church and, has these allegedly the big sex parties where he's a power bottom. I mean, listen, there's nothing wrong with doing that. There's nothing wrong with being gay. But if you present yourself as an authentic representative of your faith and you live non-truth, I'm sorry, fuck you.
Well, we always say that people who are closeted gays, who are afraid of their own gay sides, often project it out, like preachers. Like in Boise, Idaho, you have a
Right.
preacher who's virulently anti-gay,
Right.
another one in Florida. And, we, after a while, have been exposed to that all our lives,
Yeah.
Since we are young.
Right.
And we've always had these, it used to be many, many church people put us down. But now it is less. And the virulent people who are still doing that, who are putting out hate, though I don't concentrate on them or anything, though they take up a lot of the media, we have already been through that in our lives, and we
many times.
have transcended it
Yeah.
in so many ways,
Yeah.
because we have our own ministry. We have our own ability to talk about spirit and to
Right.
talk from our hearts.
Right.
And those things, in a way, are reactionary to us. They are something when we say everything is moving faster, it means that also we're going through an evolution that is inclusive,
Right.
that cares, that is
It-
actually quite kind.
It
is the
has to
evolution.
be inclusive. There is no other way, because
Care for extinct animals,
Mm.
care for animals, care for people that are on the marginal lines. That inclusive society, that transformation, very important to us.
it's, again, we're going back to all these people who are gonna be stripped to their bones, and that is just the beginning.
Mm.
Because there are people with a lot of courage who now
Mm.
tell the truth. They speak the truth despite what can happen to them.
Mm.
The Will Smiths, the Jada Smiths, all these people. And again, I want to say there is no judgment. There's nothing wrong if Jada and Will Smith are gay. It's fine. You know what I mean? It's fine. There is nothing wrong with it. It is
Or bisexual, whatever you
or
want to call it.
anything, you see. Just don't
Or
come with
pansexual.
I'm still working on my acceptance for they, them. I have to say, this is also grammatically just wrong in my head. I'm trying, okay? I'm getting there very slowly. But the thing is, again, there is a dialogue that we see now about transgender people and transsexuality. There is a medical basis for it. When you say I'm non-binary, to me, this is a political statement.
Mm.
You can't inject yourself in every umbrella, in every group, because now you feel that way. It's a very different, you see what I mean? This is what I mean with truth. You can make a statement, say I'm non-binary because, of this and that, which is fine. But, it's different to have a let me say, a medical, proven, researched condition, let me call it this way, because there's enough research now about it. And suddenly, people came out of their homes with a COVID and, invented all these they, thems, it, this, that, and I'm non-binary and transgender. And I mean, sorry, everything in the kitchen sink, and I think that muddles a lot truth, because that is now a form of authenticity that is presented. But is it true? And so we're going to come now into a Platonic phase where all these terms will have to become solid in their potential. It has to give something to society, because look, that's my observation only. All these non-binary stuff, all these statements, all these they, thems, and she and it, and so on, all that stuff has not helped the gay LGBT community. It pushed it actually back quite a bit, because it did present us in some shape and form like how can I say this? We're like a hotel now, everybody's welcomed. And we come from a generation where we fought a long, long time for gay rights, and we're not even done yet. And now to have the house open for everybody and everything, I personally don't feel comfortable with it. But that also applies to me in spirituality. You know this very well. There are people who read a book and suddenly they're Kabbalists on Monday. On Tuesday they do yoga. On Wednesday they do teacher training. There is just a lack of truth in the authenticity. It's just because it's so easy. You can buy your diplomas online now. You really don't need anything.
Well, you talk a lot about false teachers. We are also in a time period of many, many false teachers.
Yeah.
Many people who are not really prepared to teach spiritually, and yet they start right away.
Right.
Without any kind of training, or really they just read books. And this is another problem of, is it really true if you've just read it in a book and you've absorbed it and it's, correlated with your own truth?
Yeah.
There's more to it than that. Usually prepare for a life before you're born. And, we have to be very clear about what kind of training we all undergo and how do we prepare for these lives. For instance, before I came into this life, I wanted to be gay. I have not been gay in other lives, but in this life I wanted to. And so then in this life, that's the way you are. And you feel it from when you're young. And I'm sure many trans people feel the same way.
Yeah.
You're born that way and there's no more dialogue about it. Why doesn't the society accept all of us?
Yeah.
Why are we considered marginal because we're not breeding children or whatever? That all has come up because you have different laws, and you have African countries certainly who say they're going to put us all in jail again. That is reaction. Yeah, that is reactionary.
Right.
And that is going backward from this inclusiveness. But of course, once we include some things, we're going to include a lot of things. I was in somebody's house and people say very false things. What Pelosi said, they distort it, and none of that is true, yet they believe it. And you can talk to your blue in the face and still they will tell you, no, that's true. In my mind, it's true because I believe it.
It has to fit in the narrative. Yeah.
So then we start to question beliefs. What is your philosophy? So what do you really believe? Does the belief come from your real truth, or does it come from a false personality that you've created because of something that's happened? For instance, we had friends who are anti-vaxxers, and they've created a whole new kind of truth that is not quite truth.
Right.
It's more your personality and defending yourself.
Right.
And now you put down California, New York, and all these kind of places. So that kind of division isn't helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And we try to find a similarity with people, which is spirituality, that they need to feel good about themselves again. They need to feel good about, even if they've made the wrong decisions, that they make it work in some way in their lives, like people who move to some place that they don't enjoy anymore. And they're trying to figure out, what do I enjoy in my life? Like many people I know who are not very spiritual, but started ayahuasca. And in this way, they are starting to have a kind of spirituality because of a plant substance. So that's also happening. People who were very against, drugs all their lives are now taking,
mushrooms.
Yeah, mushrooms and a new form of therapy that involves hallucinogenics, where they take out a lot of the active hallucinogenic effect. And you get it in more of a homeopathic almost form, or a much more diluted form, and yet it balances them.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have lots of clergy doing ayahuasca and all sorts of things now, and peyote. So that's fascinating to us.
Yeah.
People are opening, and they're opening on a very large scale, while other people are retreating, and I would say quite a majority is retreating into their own security.
Right.
We just came from Dallas,
right?
Where many people want security.
Mm-hmm.
They want everything well. They want to ship out all the, people who are crossing the border, 90,000 last year, who crossed the border. They ship them to northern cities who can barely, the refuge cities, where they can barely deal with them all. And I don't think that's a solution either. I think that's quite mean-spirited. And they say, now you know what it's like to deal with all these, people crossing the border and immigrants. Then you have other immigrants who want them out. I mean, it's quite a conundrum here. So when I go into politics, I don't really see very much spiritual care. Any spirituality. Before, we had at one time more initiated people. I'm not saying that Freemasons or whatever are necessarily initiated people, but I think in the 18th century, probably they were. And probably they were in a more rigorous understanding of spirit. That is beyond even Christianity, that is more to get to the fundamental truths. And, as many people turn away from religions now, not all, but many people do, because they're still very kind ministers and people who are inclusive. When you're not inclusive, when you don't show love or kindness or care for the people who come, when you're not really trained, to be connected to spirit and talk to people from a level of spirit, like you do so beautifully. You bring people always back to their souls. This is one of your great gifts. And people suddenly realize in any session with you who they actually are and what they really think, and they see another perspective, but they feel that perspective is from another level. Like Christos sometimes, in his philosophical way of teaching, his philosophy, hermetics, is so strong that when you're listening to him and he's teaching, you receive things on so many levels. And we don't get that in normal life. We certainly don't get that on internet. And gurus sometimes do that on internet. I've seen some wonderful Indian gurus who can talk in a higher philosophy, who understand. I think this competition, too, between spiritual people, because I taught at Whole Life Expos many places, and people can be quite dismissive of you. They are, they need the money because of their children, whatever, and their families, but they're quite competitive. They act like rock stars or whatever. I didn't really like it, I have to say. And a lot of my favorite teachers, I read their books, I met them in real life. Really, I have to say, I didn't actually like them very much. So I'd rather read the book. And that disappointment, I've had many disappointments with that, meeting teachers that I didn't enjoy. While spiritual teachers that I met that were much more quiet, that are much more authentic to me, who had an aura around them that was gigantic, who showed me what they could do. You feel it in 2 minutes, and that's something you can't fake. And because I've been exposed to that in my life, like a real yogi or a real guru or a real teacher, and you too, exposed to you and being with you as a true Hermetic teacher. And some of the shamans I met, some of them don't want any followers. They don't want anybody to know about them, but they taught me. And I have to say, for all their cruel teachings and everything they did to me, I love them. I wouldn't have had it any differently.
It was the right thing at the right time, but you have to admit,
the discipline.
This is a different time. I think that people have now the perception that all they need is one Google search and they basically ingested wisdom with the golden spoon, And I can't tell you how often when I'm being asked something and I give a very thorough answer usually.
You do.
And then I'm being confronted with, well, on the internet I read something else. And I'm like, why am I not throwing you out the window in that moment? It's amazing to me that it is a different time. I really think that the training that I went through, that you went through, I think it's over. Yeah. I think that's over. Here to motivate people, really not even tell them, but motivate them to kind of keep up the work and do the thing. It's almost, you hear so many excuses in the end that I think, then just, it's like a pair of shoes spirituality. Now you buy it and eventually you will wear them once or twice and then put them back in the box, And this is what bothers me a little bit. It has become too cheap,
Cheapened.
Our world has gotten cheapened, I have to say. And, but again, this is a side effect of the times we live, basically, because all you need to do is you go online and you steal and it's for free. No one gets caught. It's almost impossible these days. I had whole workbooks copied and printed as books in other countries,
Or just
something that I would never think doing, but this is the reality I'm dealing with.
Or all the fake phone calls now, and everybody it keeps getting worse and worse every year. Fake emails and
Right.
people trying to steal from you.
Right.
I mean, we get calls all day.
All day.
Even if we have it blocked,
all day.
They find a new phone number.
No.
And it's invasive too.
Right.
This feeling that social media gets invasive, and many people I know just turn it off.
Yeah.
They stop.
Yeah.
So
it's a medium that you have to learn to use.
You need boundaries. You need very clear boundaries in society.
Yeah.
Especially with new phone calls, with computers, with everything that's so open.
And how much we share information with people in the end.
So I have to remain optimistic anyway.
Yeah.
Especially, whether we're going to have self-driving cars and we're going to go to outer space and many things in the next decade. We must also have a level of trust when no one's driving a car. When we have robots in a house who are doing, your housework, which is coming also within 10 years.
As I say, I think that this will be the 20 years of the most connected and the most alone. I think it's inevitable, which again, I don't mind. I don't mind to be online and teach online as long it's motivational enough to motivate somebody to devote themselves. I don't like the word discipline. It sounds like work, but I think we need a form of devotion. I talked in the last little Q&A that you did for the last Vimeo about the ritualization of everyday life. I think, when you look at countries like India, or Egypt, for example, of course, in the Muslim world, 5 times prayer, I think it's fantastic. It prevents you from doing stupid things. It realigns you in the middle, but also it keeps you connected on a more regular basis instead of tuning in and tuning out. So I think that this is a good year to really practice to the best of your ability a very ritualistic approach of devotion.
That's what we do.
That's what we do, of course. And I know it works, and I know it has an effect because that's how I learned it. But
I keep the fire burning on my altar always.
Yeah.
Always, except when I'm not at home.
For example, right? Keep a candle burning at all times. And before the candle goes extinct, you light a new candle with it. Keep the fire going. This is one of the most beautiful rituals in the Orthodox Church. And it's usually, for me, it's really only Eastern, where we go into these little churches in Greece, in the villages where my parents come from. And it would be completely dark at midnight. And the priest would come out eventually with a blessed candle, with a blessed light. And everybody in the church, we're talking about hundreds of people, have a candle that they light from that light. And they share the light. It's like an ocean.
Beautiful.
And so I remember my grandmother going to church, taking her candle, go home, which was literally across the street. Leave it to my family to live across from the church, but across the street, and she would light a candili. A candili is a little oil lamp with, of course, Mary, Joseph, and Christ around, but it's a little oil lamp, and she would keep that light going the whole year. The whole year. That is a form of devotion. It's a religious context, of course, but it's spiritual devotion.
Well, one thing that has changed us also is we are also very different than religions, because when we talk about light, we're also talking about Lucifer, because Lucifer is the light bringer. In any country that talks about light, lux, from the Latin.
Lux, yeah.
Lux, like Lucy, or any of these things, Santa Lucia, all this. These are light bringers of that tradition.
Yeah.
That name is that tradition.
Yeah.
From Venus, also the Venusian idea.
Right.
And then you talked about God as the void, as the nothing, as actually pure darkness. So when you enter the pure darkness,
and it doesn't mean negativity with darkness. Don't get it wrong.
And you saturate the darkness.
Right.
That's God.
That is. It's the primordial void of all creation where everything happens. I think it's an amazing place. I can only sense when I tune into it how vast and how amazing it is. So again, when we talk about darkness, it has nothing to do with dark and evil and black. It has
no dogma.
It has nothing to do with human concepts.
No,
that's the idea. I think because we have lived now thousands of years very much in a human conditioned belief system. What the devil is, other people are evil. If they don't believe in your God, they're also evil. And today we have it the same way, that people, start to preach, and on a plane, they start to sing Jesus songs. I don't pay $1,000 to listen to that nonsense, because then I could start, and
That's why people stay with their own groups. They're in
there
their
you
own
go.
tribes.
You see, and that is totally fine. But again, every practice, especially religious practice, which says you have to convert somebody,
No,
or you have to,
never proselytize.
you know,
Yeah. But I did a
amazing to
practice where I went into that darkness and I overlaid more darkness, made it
Mm.
thicker and thicker and thicker. And it had the reverse effect of what, Christianity and everybody says. In fact, it brings you closer to divinity
absolutely.
and your own divine self. You crossing the abyss, right?
Yeah,
For you, crossing the Ad
yeah,
and crossing to the other side and knowing the abyss.
Yeah.
And then, then there's these traditions where you light a candle, you're in the darkness,
Right.
which is what we do. We like to do for New
in
Year's.
Kabbalah. Well, it's
It's a practice.
it's a practice in Kabbalah. It's not for New Year's. It's in practicing Kabbalah. It's also a practice in Islam, where they don't even have candles. They just stand in the desert. When the sun sets, they turn around and wait for the sun to rise in the east. All night, no movement, standing still, not even sitting, standing still. And in my Bina practice, I adapted this, where you prepare yourself for 8 months. It comes at the end of a journey, to spend one dark night with yourself and your thoughts and and that's what shows how well you treated yourself, and how honest, how authentic, how truthful and transparent you've been for the
And you stare at a candle. You stare at the candlelight.
well,
You're in the dark.
candle is a tool, but the preparation of months and months and months to get to that point for one simple night, that is the potential that you're trying to achieve.
Like in a vision
Transformative.
quest. Like in a vision
It
quest.
is a form of vision quest. Anything where you conduct a ritual, a devotion with ritual, you are on a vision quest, hopefully. That's why I said people do all kinds of magic, all kinds of practice, zero intention.
Mm.
They want the red car, but they also take the blue one, because, ultimately the green is also not bad. I mean, what the hell do you want? And when you don't know what you want, please do not contact us or anyone in this field, because we are intention-based people.
Mm.
Our business is to help to heal intention and help empower intention. You don't know what you want. How often people come and say,
I don't know why I'm
really-
here.
I don't know why I'm here. I'm like, I'm just out the window, It's crazy to me, because, it has
Find out why you're here.
Yeah, find out why you're here. And I think, what a waste of time. But it's a beginning for some people.
But even after the whole teaching, they're saying, why am I here? And then you just say,
Exactly.
oh, that's ridiculous.
Exactly.
Okay.
You see?
You're never here.
And so some people build in their contract an opportunity to come to a place of enlightenment. Let's call it a place of enlightenment. Just a moment. And they have a chance to take that spark and maintain it into a flame, or they're just going to pass it.
Mm.
You see?
Well, in this darkness, looking at a candle flame, the flame itself became like the eye of a dragon. And I focused only on that, on another dimension, on another place, that eye of a dragon. And every time I do that meditation, I'm in thicker and thicker darkness, and I see that dragon's eye. In that moment, that's when I think about whatever I want, money or joy or more happiness or deeper spirituality or clairvoyance, whatever. That's when it comes. I just have that thought because it's just me and that eye. And then it passes. It's gone. But for that moment, it flickers in the darkness, and it's not something bad or dark or something you should fear.
I think this is also something to emphasize, that we are not here to create darkness.
No.
This is not in the makeup of our soul or our spirit. No. It is, evil is the result of manipulation from human to human, basically. It is when we abuse each other and, mistreat each other. That's when evil is created. But it is not in our innate makeup to do something negative or to want something negative. No child, you will see, will wake up one day and say, I'm going to burn the house down consciously. If you give it matches, it's your own fault. But no one will do this consciously unless you learn that it gives you a kick or something comes out of it, or any of that stuff, right? So the idea is really to make sure to in your shadow work to really understand, is this me or is this a program? Do I really believe what I'm saying? Because very often when people do a lot of shit, they say, and you ask them, why did you do that? I don't know. See? And this is
They're not aware.
the most important reason to leave somebody. Because if they know, you can work with it. If they say, I don't know, it means that they are in such a almost comatose state, where they're not conscious about consequences. And the thing is, you cannot grow spiritually and spend your time with people who basically block you all along the way. It's just not possible. You cannot heal and meditate in a house that's burning, and hope it doesn't affect you. Eventually it will burn you down. So you have to, in this year, especially with Pluto, you have to break out of your comfort zones, also out of your lies, and also the stories that you've been telling yourself. There's so many abusive relationships that I consult, for example, of course, it's always one person of them. And they say, but I love him, and I'm like, I can't do anything for you.
To normalize violence or to normalize.
That's exactly what it is. And this person is not in her nature masochistic and says, I need that or I'm asking for it. It is the program that explained to her that's what you have to endure, and that is part of your normality. But is it true? Is it true? Is this something, and I always recommend to people when they justify these things, is this something you want your children or people you love to experience as well? Is this something normal? Let's say the majority who has still some brain cells left will say, of course, I wouldn't want this for my kids to happen. So there is an awareness, see, but the ancestral program or the childhood program, and of course also the past life program, will maintain this obligation to maintain this burden to endure something, and think that once you're croaking, to your grave, you're going to get an award at the end of the day. Because that's what we do, we award people who swim against the stream. How idiotic do you have to be?
Or we have bad bosses. I think most people come to me about bad bosses, meaning cruel bosses, manipulative bosses, and who play the victim often, and then blame the people that work for them and project all their negativity onto them. They learn that at home. They learn that in their personality quite young. Then they play it out in corporations.
Right.
They play it out in various businesses.
Right.
And people are fed up. You can easily leave work, but what if it becomes pervasive at work?
Yeah.
So I've always said in corporations and businesses, people need to be trained actually in a kind of spiritual science. They have to have mind science, like something you've taught with, how to use your mind correctly, how to program the brain and all that. And then you go into making money. You go into work. You go into it with a passion.
People want to learn to fly a plane while they're sitting in the plane, flying. It just, sorry, you can't learn to be a good soldier the moment you're about to be dropped in some battlefield.
What if people really learned how to live life? If they really learned spiritual science and then they went into a service industry?
What's interesting?
It would add so much to their work. It would make people much better and much happier in the society.
This is exactly the point. I think what's interesting is that you and I, we're being approached quite a bit by corporations and by people who run corporations and say, how can I create an environment that is more ethical, more, less bullying, and the thing is, it is an art form to choose people and to find people, first of all, but then to choose them in such a way that they really can work together. And the thing is, if you are not willing to do the work, you can't expect it from your workers, because the 99% I hear is, my boss doesn't even know what he's doing,
Exactly.
That's the idea. How many secretaries do we know who run the business?
So do you train people in finding their center, having peace of mind? First of all, when I was with the shamans, I was talking about this earlier today. They used to put candles all around me.
Mm.
So I would be in a circle of candles and I would have to be at peace. I would meditate in that circle of candles, protected by the light, protected in a circle. And I have to feel that day after day after day until finally they would throw me in the middle of a city. And you have to feel that the candles are around you
Mm.
and you have to go into that level of peace. You have to lower your blood pressure. You have to be able in that moment to go into your center and not let everything affect you around you and still be alert.
Yeah. You manipulate your energy.
That's quite a training.
That's exactly.
Everyone needs that.
Yeah.
And children need that
Totally.
even in
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
Because people ask me, what's the curriculum for children? I'm sorry, but when you have too much religious dogma in schools, everybody say it can only be this way. It has to be old Jesus, blah, blah, blah. If schools are going to separate like that, they can do that. My sister did that. She homeschooled. She did everything, Christian. What if we created a new kind of curriculum that, though, has all these things in it, but also how to do spiritual science, like how to meditate or how to
mind training.
Exactly.
Just mind training. Just help these kids with mind training. You see,
that has to happen, or there's no development.
I think something that in US really shocked me and surprised me is you can be literally dumb, but if you're running really well or you're catching a ball really well, you get into universities with scholarships. It's beyond me because I'm European. I never in my life even heard that a sports talent can replace academic knowledge, intelligence, smartness, so to speak. And I met people who are.
You need a balance.
I met people who studied, your friends who studied in Georgetown and so on. And all I thought was, what a waste of space. Because,
what did they do with it?
What do they do with it in the end? And the way they approach it and the way they talk about it. And it's like, really, that's it? That was the whole thing,
Character. You're now going back into character.
Character. Develop character, develop social skills, develop kindness, compassion. That's what starts in schools because it doesn't start at home. Parents, especially today, are not equipped to have kids. Let's be honest. It's amazing how many parental advice I have to give sometimes. And I raised kids. I don't have them, but I'm experienced in what it means to teach children. And it's amazing, basic understanding.
That you should write a book about because that you're very good at.
Plus, I'm good in everything. The thing is, I'm not supposed to be good in everything. I'm supposed to translate this for other people, for them to be good. I could write a book about kids, but again, it is that parents have to be willing before they have children to really look at themselves and say, am I really made for kids?
But we have a lot of women whose their whole purpose, again, is only a child.
Only a child.
Nothing for them.
Yeah.
It's all selfless for the child.
Yeah.
And that's not a good way to be a mother.
No.
I know that we were taught that religiously, whatever, but...
You're supposed to love your children. You don't have to like them. You don't have to like them and justify every bullshit they do. I love my kids. Do I like what they do? No. Do I tell them? No, because no one's asking me. But I'm not quitting loving them, you see. But again, we're back to the gay thing. How many parents, who are so Christian and so evolved, the moment their kid is something, they throw them out. Yes. You should not have children.
Yes, people who don't accept gay children shouldn't have children.
You shouldn't have kids,
But many do now. Many now accept their kids.
The thing is, again, I think this is going to become a really important subject. I jokingly said a couple of years ago in a workshop, and people were totally horrified, but I said, in a couple of years, there should be an IQ test, if you're even equipped mentally to have kids. Because once you have children, your life is over.
Life is your kids.
Because we see so many also gay parents now, and they have no fucking clue what's happening to them. They're not even aware what's going to happen to them. And any kind of parent really, because it is a massive undertaking. And I love, of course, when people with no kids give parents with kids advice. Keep it quiet. Um, Let
Or
it
they
play.
adopt kids.
I mean,
Many people adopt
I think it's
kids too.
amazing how people with no experience suddenly become experts in everything.
I always think people who have no kids can go to an adoption place where a lot of kids are just waiting, and to give them gifts at Christmas or to help those kids that are orphans.
You know,
That would be a wonderful thing in society.
you know,
I don't know what we can do for homeless people, but there has to be somewhere where you can invite them into a home and help them again to start their lives, find out where their lives ended, where they lost their money, where they lost all value in
Yeah.
themselves, and begin to talk to people,
No,
just
it's
as
this-
human beings.
it's the second chance, isn't it? To give people a chance, because
That's
in
how I
this
see
country,
society. Yeah.
it's so easy to end up on the street.
My sisters were social
Oh.
workers. Everybody tried.
Yeah.
But not through a system. What about through compassionate?
Mm.
The beginning with many people and a large support system
Mm.
to start training people in how to speak with others.
Right.
But then you get into some people are quite violent and mentally ill.
You find violent and mentally ill people
They need a
in
different place.
on a
Yes.
yacht. I saw
Yes.
them in New York in the best restaurants
Yes.
acting out. So they don't have to be on the street. Trust me.
No, no.
They can wear Gucci loafers and be totally insane.
Which we find in many biographies now.
Anyway, I think, oh my God, is this a rant podcast? Probably for ranting. But we've observed, we watched and observed, and
I've always seen the beauty in
we
people.
talk about things.
The good
You
in
are
people.
really a healer for us. I don't see the beauty in people. I see
do.
what's lacking. I'm trained to see what's lacking, and my need is to push somebody to get better.
We all
I'm
do
trained
that,
like this. What's the point of not being ambitious? What's the point of? I don't say you have to have a career out of every passion, but if it is passion, if it is something you love, why not take it serious and bring it to a level where it can sustain you. It can transform your life, basically. Because I think that ultimately you need passion for something to reach a level of success in any shape or form. You have to have a level of passion. If that's gone, from relationships to jobs to even spiritual undertakings, it's you have to maintain a level of passion in it. It's the fuel that keeps everything together. If that's gone, it's just mechanism, and then it never ends. In the end,
You're always the same. And you always talk about how the brain doesn't like change.
the brain hates change.
So we have to always keep tricking the brain.
Right,
Like you talk about taking a cold shower, the 30 seconds,
right.
or many other things we can do.
The concept of biohacking is everywhere now. But again, it's always connected to by this device, by that device. And really, the only biohacking thing you need is to train your mind, to train your brain, and then to train your body to obey to you and your will. And that costs nothing. It just costs energy to really have an intention. What do I want at the end of the day? Which is a transformative aspect, basically, And this is Pluto next year.
Or to have an
Pluto
open
is
mind.
Pluto is a transformer, first and foremost. But Pluto in Greek also means wealth. Pluto means prosperity, basically. So there is such an interesting connection to the concept of abundance and empowerment of some sort, or breaking out of empowerment, because either with Pluto you break out or you empower. It's not either one or the other. It depends where you are in your life at the moment. When you're too stuck, you have to break out first. If you're already in your work and if you're already doing your thing, then you come into empowerment, and empowerment will always lead to leadership, even if you don't feel like one. We know the most incompetent people in leadership becoming leaders because they made the effort to transform themselves beyond their astrologic charts and karmic frames and contracts. They really make an effort and say, I never thought I could become this, because it wasn't thought out in the original contract, but it can be achieved. So it's either breaking out or empowerment or leadership. That's the whole Plutonic path.
Well, what we've been studying lately is the different personality types. First of all, in the Enneagram, where you can go into the 0 point in the center of the Enneagram
Right.
and go to the higher intuition.
Right.
Or you go into the personality types of homeopathy,
Mm-hmm.
which then are, you treat them with certain homeopathic remedies based on your personality type.
Right.
And we've been going through that as a shadow work.
Right.
To clear your personality, to clear certain aspects of your character that you come in here too clean. We call this the great purification.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're purifying yourself, this is what it means also.
Right.
It's the knowledge. And we
Right.
talked about homeopathy.
It's not burning sage.
No,
Right.
it's much more. And as you get into these levels of knowledge,
Right.
you are purifying yourself.
Right.
Like then we went through Abramelin rituals,
Right.
where we had to go through meeting your
All these rituals,
higher self, whatever your
all
true
these
self.
rituals require purification. Very physical. But here, of course, this is the thing. You always ask, and all the people say, why I don't create a school. The thing is, in my kind of school, I would demand 3 years
Which I
of
think you will.
devotion.
Yeah.
And I just don't see it. I just don't see it with people. And it's too much effort. For me, it's a lot of effort to put this together and not have the required intention.
It's
in
a
that
new
sense.
thing to do it on internet for 3 years.
Yeah,
It's
but
quite a new
it's doable. But
concept.
again, it's showing up in the end. You know what I mean? It's
because
showing up.
the next 20 years is all internet, it's all online.
It's
all
already.
that
It's
stuff.
already. But again, I do think it's important to come together as groups.
I would
No.
love that.
And
We've
That-
had
the devotion of really intentionally being there and showing up. This is for me something where I'm not so sure.
well, so much
If,
is
I'm not so sure if it's
you get a group of people together, you're going to have amplification of things. You're going to have certain people doing power struggles, like in a coven. You're going to have all sorts of issues concerning, those that you want to kick out of the group.
yeah.
You have people that are very aligned, and you have very different levels
Yeah.
of development.
Well, the thing is in Hermetics, when you're in, you're in.
Right.
There is no kicking out and going out.
And you have to go through the whole
no.
process.
You have to go through the process. And this is something that I require. Nothing else. Not because I need it. Because, money-wise, it's going to be the same. Time is going to be the same. It's you have to decide if you want to approach this journey. In Kabbalah, for example, my form of Kabbalah, it takes a 10-month journey. And if you stop in between, you have to start all over again. That's
Refining
the
yourself.
very few rules.
Yes.
So to really enter, and I experienced mystery schools. The last real ones, I have to say, and there were hardly 10 people in there, simply because the amount of devotion you needed, the amount of effort, it's really work.
It is.
I just don't think that people have the stamina anymore. They're just
Or the balance. You need to have balance for that. To balance your work
you
life
have
and this
everything.
life.
Also, it's not one or two, it's everything.
People feel very
Ultimately,
crowded
it
in.
is the wanting of intention. I want to see how much further I can go, and that is the idea. And that just takes time. It takes effort, and
Because
I'm struggling with the idea because we talked so often about to build a school, and I'm always creating something, and then I kind of give it up because I just don't feel that there is a core of mind that is willing to do the work. I think, but I'm very open to be surprised, I'm very
And I
open to be
think-
surprised.
I asked you to just do an introduction to Enochian magic. And that's very hard for you to just do the introduction.
Because it's so complex. It's so complex. It's so majestic. It's an epic to go through. And I've changed quite a bit in it. I developed a lot in it. But to translate that to somebody brand new, it's almost like lobotomy,
The first
It-
step of the epic.
It's really that is a life's kind of work. And I don't know if I want to spend the few years I have left doing that, unless I am being, unless somebody shows up and says,
That's
you're
what I
supposed to
want.
do that. But I'm not going to choose it myself because and again, 55, I spent now 35 years of my life, a little bit more, 37 years. At the majority of my life, I gave to this world.
Mm.
And it's one thing to have the strength to do it. It's another thing to have the energy to do it.
Yes.
You know, and you
We're
have
older
to.
now.
We all have to acknowledge that we can be strong enough, but doesn't mean we have the energy enough to do this. And you know, now we talk a lot about energy these days, and I do understand people completely, because it's not just going to work, coming back, and having a little family. We are bombarded with so many demands and so much influences and data that
So
it
much.
exhausts us. You know, it
Yes.
drains us basically, right? Yeah,
Every film, everything we watch now, it's not just
Yeah.
an entertainment, it's
No.
much more.
it's much more.
So, you know, after 40 years of being a healer,
Mm-hmm.
all the curanderas I met, all the different people that I love that were teachers, and living it and learning how to clear a curse or learning how to break things, you know, in the shamanic school,
Mm.
certainly how to get rid of the cords in the body, how to release people from tremendous traumas
Yeah.
and helping them. And I did studies that lasted years with people, many years. And I went through this 12-year training anyway in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I lived there, and I undergo it in such a way where I didn't talk about it, my own training. I kept it all inside because it was always ongoing. And I never stopped
Intense.
it. And yeah, and a lot of it is quite internal.
Very intense. And
You're not with your teacher most of the time. You have
Yeah.
to undergo different travails.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's that moment in shamanism when you die, when they have to bring you to the edge of death. I did that when I was 28 in my Saturn return. I allowed myself to die, go to the other side, and not be afraid of death.
Mm.
Because once you conquer that, in shamanism, you can do almost anything.
Anything.
That's when you become the guide or the person who leads in transition.
Yeah.
You help people to go to the light.
That is the great knowledge in Hermetics, is to reach a level where you have such complete insight beyond the veil that it erases any fear of what might come. It's
That's it.
erased. It's completely erased, and because you don't think in terms of I'm alive now and dead later, you just see yourself as and experience it as an eternal existence. You know, and you know, people ask sometimes, what is the benefit of doing all this? Is that
Oh,
is
wonderful.
the benefit? It is to release all fear. The ultimate blockage that we're dealing with in this world is the fear not to belong, the fear not to be loved, the fear not to be right, the fear not to be enough. You know, this is all fears basically, and fears are numbnesses. They're numbing experiences.
Or-
And I think transcending from that fear and having a glimpse, a moment, you know, when people have ritual experiences and they do the Abramelin ritual, and it's a horrendous amount of time that you need to spend. And
Mhm.
I mean,
And many people don't finish
I'm
it.
telling you, it's
But they do, in a way.
the ones, no, either you do or you don't.
A lot
But
of them
the
don't.
people who did, they came out of these rooms after
Mm.
12, 13 months of isolation, of prayer, of purification, of intention, of
The blessing of the element. Yeah.
incredible alchemy of body, mind, and spirit that they have for 2 minutes, a complete connection to their, what Abramelin calls the guardian angel. And it is this infinite 1 second almost, you know, in which every fear, every blockage, every doubt is completely erased.
Mm.
And you are in the center of all knowing.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think that is the key of Hermetics, basically. And this is something that,
Real
you know, at
tradition.
this point in my life, that's what I'm striving for. I don't need it anymore, but still, you know, it's almost like,
What's next for you?
you know, that is a good question,
Mm.
you know, because as you know, I can't see anything for myself, and I don't ask. So what comes for me is what I'm going to focus upon next.
Mm.
And it's not something that's just going to happen. I think it's something that I have to set up. I have to intentionally put out there
Quite a
and
practice.
dedicate. And I love practice. It's just discipline.
Well,
is my,
this year you said
discipline is my second nature.
you're
these days.
dedicating it to prosperity in a new home.
Right.
That was number one
Yeah.
for you this year.
Yeah, but also expansion of every kind of project that I had that I kind of put aside to
Earlier.
serve the work, Golden Hummingbird, the traveling, and so on. I'm claiming now a lot of my time back. I just have to do it, because if I don't do it now, I don't see myself doing it later. And this is the good time. This is a good time for me to approach this. What is up for you next year?
Next year, 2024?
Mm.
More of this, more of communicating to audiences again, coming out of myself more. I have another series to do, another 9 Vimeos coming this summer. So I'm finishing mine in February this year, and then I go on tour in Europe. And then, I don't even know what we're going to teach this year, but we said it's initiations. So we're going to initiate people into many things, because almost everything is on Vimeo that we wanted to teach, and more is coming.
Yeah.
But I think we have to initiate people into new activities. Whatever initiation is, however we're called to do that. But we're going to initiate quite a lot of people into
Good.
Probably a higher dimension.
And what are you guys going to do? So this is a good moment to set an intention and put it on your vision board. Don't forget, guys, do your vision board. Put something on it that is believable, that is reasonable, that is doable for you, and just put it in your power directions. And every day, welcome the new reality that you are evoking.
Yeah, I love when you evoke insights, when a spirit gives you incredible insight, and that you take the time to write it down. You take the time to remember it, because it turns your world upside down.
Yeah.
I love, because that's also Enochian.
Yeah.
They're turning your world upside down, and you're seeing it from a completely different perspective, and it blows your mind.
Yeah.
And you want to remember that moment of insight.
Write it down
and pass it on. You want to transmit it.
Get a journal and make it your 2024 magical journal, in which you intentionally write down, declare your intention and your goal for this year. With this, I think we managed. We are really, really sorry that we just couldn't create this podcast much more regular the way we wanted. But we have now. We have
a whole studio.
We have a little studio, but again, we're going to be on the road, so we're going to be back to the shitty little iPhone. There's no other way to do it. But remember, we do this really out of fun, and to connect with all of you and to inspire you more. There's nothing we get out of it, really. Therefore, please like, subscribe, and share as much as you can, so that I know that it's worth doing. And one of my goals is next year, by the way, is to start my own little
TikTok.
My own little TikTok and my own little podcast that I'm gonna focus only on the universal mastermind concept. And that I can do much more quicker, much more faster, because it's just me, and I don't need to look good. So you got to live with this. Sorry, but that's just what you have to look at. Therefore, we wish you guys a happy new year, a blessed new year, a lot of joy, happiness, and health, especially. Look in your charts, look in your transits, take advantage of where your constellations are, and let that be a little bit of a frame or a guiding path of how to maneuver through the next couple of months. And of course, we are here too. You can book us
here.
We are at home. We're in our little tracksuits, our little pajamas mostly. So we're very happy to do sessions. I wish you all the best.
Welcome to 2024.
And
may it be very happy for you.
Absolutely.
May you feel blessed, and may you also be blessed by the elements.
And
that's our initiations that we're doing. We're blessing people with the elements.
And thank you to everybody who came for 2023 and 22 and 21 and 20 and 19 and all the years before. We really, appreciate
40 years.
Really appreciate all of you who crossed paths with us together. Absolutely. Individually.
Yes.
And for those who will about to come, and the new generations who hopefully will give me some hope. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Much love. And until we meet again.